Hey everyone, welcome to Midnight Mystic Stories. I noticed a lot of you who are watching and enjoying the content aren't subscribed yet. If you love spine-chilling stories, creepy encounters, and unexplained mysteries, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It really helps the channel grow and helps us keep bringing more of the content you love. And be sure to comment below where you are tuning in from. Thank you and enjoy the video. I swiped with the detached amusement of someone playing a particularly dull video game. Most guys were the usual suspects: gym selfies, holding fish they definitely didn't catch, and bios that read like they were written by a committee of brothers. Then I saw Ethan. His profile was different. No posed pictures, just candid shots of him laughing, looking at art in a museum, hiking in the mountains. His bio was short and sweet: artist, adventurer, amateur chef. Looking for someone to share the view, and maybe a good plate of pasta. He was cute too, in a rugged, outdoorsy kind of way. Not classically handsome, but definitely interesting. I swiped right without thinking. We matched. The conversation flowed easily. He asked me about my photography, which I'm seriously passionate about, and actually seemed interested in my answer. We talked about our favorite books, our dream travel destinations, and our mutual hatred for pineapple on pizza. It felt effortless. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe there were actually decent humans hiding in the digital wasteland. We decided to meet for coffee. He suggested this little independent place, tucked away on a side street I'd never even noticed before. The cafe was cozy, filled with the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the low hum of conversation. He was even more attractive in person. His eyes, which were this intense shade of green, crinkled when he smiled. We talked for hours, oblivious to the people around us. The coffee date turned into dinner, which turned into a walk through the park under the stars. It felt like something out of a movie. Too good to be true, probably. But I let myself get swept away. I hadn't felt this excited about someone in a long time. Over the next few weeks, we were inseparable. We went to art galleries, hiked in the nearby state park, cooked elaborate meals together in my tiny apartment. He even helped me build a darkroom in my spare bedroom, something I'd been putting off for months. He was kind, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in everything I had to say. He was also incredibly talented. His paintings were breathtaking, capturing the beauty and raw emotion of the natural world. I was smitten, completely and utterly smitten. Then things started to get weird. It started subtly. He'd get these intense, faraway looks in his eyes, like he was seeing something I couldn't. He'd be talking about something perfectly normal, and then suddenly trail off, lost in his own thoughts. When I asked him what was wrong, he'd just smile and say, "Nothing, just thinking." Then there was the insomnia. He'd stay up all night, pacing around my apartment, muttering to himself. When I woke up, he'd be sitting by the window, staring out at the darkness. He claimed he was just working on a new painting, but I could see the exhaustion in his face. The paintings themselves were changing too. They were becoming darker, more distorted. The landscapes were still beautiful, but there was a sense of unease, a feeling that something was lurking just beneath the surface. He started painting the same twisted tree over and over. Each painting was worse than the last. One night, I woke up to find him standing over me, staring down at me while I slept. His eyes were wide and vacant. I gasped, and he jumped back, startled. I was just making sure you were okay," he stammered. "You were tossing and turning." I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I started doing some digging. I know, it's creepy, but I needed to know what was going on. I started with his social media. His accounts were all relatively new, with only a handful of posts. No pictures of family, no old friends, nothing that gave me any insight into his past. It was like he'd appeared out of nowhere. Then I found his website. It was a simple portfolio showcasing his paintings. There was also a contact form, which I filled out, pretending to be an art collector interested in purchasing his work. I used a fake name and email address, just in case. A few days later, I received a response. It wasn't from Ethan. It was from someone claiming to be his manager, a woman named Sarah, ironically. She informed me that Ethan was currently unavailable due to a personal matter, and that she would be happy to assist me with any inquiries. I asked her how long she had been working with him. Her response sent a chill down my spine. "Ethan has been my client for almost 10 years, she wrote. "He's a very talented artist, but he's also had some challenges." I pressed her for more information, but she refused to elaborate. She just kept repeating that he was unavailable and that she would be in touch when he was back on his feet. I confronted Ethan. He denied everything. He claimed he didn't have a manager, that the website was old and outdated, that I was being paranoid. But I could see the fear in his eyes. He was lying. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Sarah had said about his challenges. What were they? What was he hiding? I got up and went into the living room, hoping to distract myself with a book. That's when I saw it. His sketchbook was lying open on the coffee table. I picked it up, my hands trembling. The pages were filled with sketches of the twisted tree, each one more disturbing than the last. But it wasn't just the tree that was disturbing. It was what was underneath it. Hidden among the roots, he had drawn faces. Faces that were twisted in pain and terror. Faces that looked vaguely familiar. Faces that looked like me. I slammed the sketchbook shut, my heart pounding in my chest. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and ran out of the apartment. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I drove straight to the police station. I told them everything. About the dating app, about the paintings, about the sketchbook, about the woman who claimed to be his manager. They listened patiently, but I could tell they didn't believe me. They said they would look into it, but they warned me that there wasn't much they could do without any concrete evidence. I didn't go back to my apartment. I stayed at a friend's house for a few days, too scared to be alone. The police eventually contacted me to say they had spoken to Ethan. He had admitted to the challenges Sarah had mentioned, which he said were related to anxiety and depression. He had agreed to seek professional help. They said he posed no threat to me and that I was free to return to my apartment. But I couldn't. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, watching me. I sold my apartment, packed my bags, and moved to a different state. I changed my phone number, deleted my social media accounts, and tried to start over. I still think about him sometimes, about the way he made me feel, about the beautiful paintings, about the twisted tree. I still have nightmares about the faces in the sketchbook. I haven't used a dating app since, and I probably never will. Some views are better shared with only myself. Thank you very much. His name was Alex, and he seemed normal. Maybe a little too normal. Like the kind of guy you'd see mowing his lawn on a Saturday afternoon, wearing khakis and a polo shirt tucked in. But hey, I dated enough interesting guys who turned out to be colossal train wrecks. Normal sounded good for once. We chatted for a few days. His messages were polite, asked about my interests, and didn't include any weird emojis or blatant come-ons. Red flag number one should have been how quickly he wanted to meet up. Like, within the first day of talking. I brushed it off, thinking he was just eager. I was too, I guess. Tired of the endless swiping and dead-end conversations. He suggested a coffee shop in a part of town I didn't usually go to. Said it was his favorite, a little place with amazing atmosphere. I looked it up online. It seemed cute enough, all fairy lights and mismatched furniture. It was also way out of the way, but I figured, whatever, maybe it'll be worth it. The coffee shop was even more tucked away than I imagined. It was on a side street, almost hidden behind a laundromat. The fairy lights were definitely there, but they were dim and a few were flickering. The place looked empty. I almost turned around. I should have turned around. Alex was already inside, sitting at a small table by the window. He looked exactly like his pictures. Average height, brown hair, a slightly receding hairline. He was wearing a blue button-down shirt and, yes, khaki pants. He smiled when he saw me and stood up to greet me. "Hey, you made it," he said, his voice a little too enthusiastic. "Yeah, sorry I'm late," I said, even though I wasn't. The coffee shop was even weirder inside. The mismatched furniture looked like it had been salvaged from a dumpster. There were dusty books stacked on shelves, and the air smelled faintly of mothballs. The only other person inside was the barista, a young woman with heavy eye makeup and a bored expression. We ordered our coffees, and Alex started talking, and talking, and talking. He talked about his job, something in accounting. his hobbies, bird watching and stamp collecting, and his family. His mom was a saint. His dad was complicated. It was like he was reading from a script. There was no flow, no natural conversation. I tried to interject, to ask him questions, but he just steamrolled over me, continuing his monologue. I started to feel uneasy. Not scared exactly, but definitely uncomfortable. This wasn't just awkward. It was off. After about an hour, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. I needed a break, a chance to collect myself. The bathroom was in the back of the coffee shop, down a narrow hallway. The hallway was dark, and the air was even thicker with the smell of mothballs. The bathroom was tiny and cramped. The sink was chipped, and the mirror was cloudy. As I washed my hands, I noticed something in the corner of the room. A small wooden box. It was tucked away, almost hidden behind the toilet. Curiosity got the better of me. I reached for the box and opened it. Inside, there were pictures. Not just any pictures. Pictures of me. Pictures taken over the past few weeks. Pictures of me leaving my apartment, walking to my car, going to the grocery store. Pictures of me I didn't even know existed. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just creepy. This was terrifying. I slammed the box shut and ran back to the main room. Alex was still sitting at the table, sipping his coffee. He smiled when he saw me. "Everything okay?" he asked. I didn't say anything. I just stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. "What's wrong?" he asked, his smile faltering. I grabbed my purse and stood up. "I have to go," I said, my voice shaking. "Go." "But we were having such a nice time," he said, his voice rising. "No, we weren't," I said. "I know about the pictures." His face went blank. Then a slow smile spread across his lips. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a predatory smile. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice low and menacing. I didn't wait to hear more. I turned and ran out of the coffee shop, out onto the street. I ran as fast as I could, not stopping until I was far away from that place. I called a cab and went straight home. I locked all the doors and windows and didn't leave my apartment for days. I reported Alex to the dating app, but they said they couldn't do anything without more information. I went to the police, but they said it wasn't a crime to take pictures of someone in public. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like I was being watched. I deleted my dating app profiles and swore off online dating forever. A few weeks later, I was walking home from work when I saw him, across the street, standing under a streetlight. He didn't say anything. He just smiled and waved. I froze. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I just stood there, paralyzed with fear. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. I still see him sometimes. In crowds, on the bus, in the grocery store. He's always there, just out of reach. A constant reminder of that terrifying date. He's never done anything, never said anything. But I know he's watching. I still look over my shoulder. I still have nightmares. And I still regret swiping right. I regret looking for someone real, because sometimes the realest things are the most terrifying. Okay, buckle up, because this is a story that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. I swear, dating apps, they're a whole different kind of horror movie waiting to happen. It all started with a message, simple enough. "Hey, your profile said you're into old movies." "Me too." "Ever seen Carnival of Souls?" Standard stuff, right? The guy, let's call him David, seemed pretty normal at first. His pictures were, well, not amazing, but not catfish material either. Average dude, maybe a little too into flannel shirts. But hey, who am I to judge? We chatted for a few days, traded movie recommendations. He had some obscure gems in there, I'll give him that, and decided to meet up for coffee. The coffee shop was packed, which I always see as a good sign. Plenty of witnesses if things went south, you know? David was already there, sitting at a small table by the window. He looked pretty much like his photos, maybe a little shorter than I expected. We made small talk about our jobs, the weather, the usual getting-to-know-you stuff. He was a little intense, I guess. Held eye contact a little too long. Asked a lot of personal questions early on, but I chalked it up to him being eager. The coffee date turned into dinner, which I agreed to mostly out of boredom. I didn't have anything else planned, and he was insistent. He chose this Italian place downtown, all dark wood and candlelight. Classy, but kind of suffocating. He talked a lot about his family, his childhood, his dreams. He wanted to be a writer, he said, and was working on a novel. It was all a little too much, too fast. I started getting that trapped feeling, like I was being interviewed for a role I didn't even want. After dinner, he suggested we go for a walk in the park. It was a nice night, and I figured fresh air would do me good. The park was practically deserted, just a few couples here and there. We walked along the path, and he kept trying to hold my hand. I kept dodging him, pretending I didn't notice. He started talking about how much he liked me, how he felt a connection, how he could see a future with me. I swear, it had only been 6 hours. Things started to get weird when we reached this secluded gazebo in the middle of the park. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the gazebo was shrouded in shadows. He stopped walking and turned to me, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. He started saying these things, these strange, poetic things about how he felt like he'd known me his whole life, how our souls were intertwined, how we were destined to be together. It was seriously creepy. I tried to laugh it off, to lighten the mood. I said something like, "Whoa, slow down, Shakespeare. We just met today." But he didn't laugh. He just stared at me, his expression intense and unsettling. He reached out and touched my face, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw. I froze. I wanted to pull away, but I was scared to make him angry. He started to lean in, and I knew I had to do something. I pushed him away, not hard, but enough to create some space. "David," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "this is too much. I'm not comfortable with this." His face changed. The intensity turned into something colder, something darker. He stepped closer to me, blocking my path. "Don't you see?" he said, his voice low and raspy. "We're meant to be together. You can't fight destiny." That's when I knew I was in trouble. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the adrenaline surging through my veins. He kept coming towards me, his eyes fixed on mine. I was trapped in the gazebo, and he was between me and the exit. I finally found my voice, a shaky whisper. "Stay away from me," I said. He just smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that sent chills down my spine. He reached into his pocket, and my blood ran cold. I didn't know what he was going to pull out, but I knew it couldn't be good. But instead of a knife, or anything violent for that matter, it was a book, an old leather-bound book. He held it out to me. "I wanted to show you something," he said. "Something special." I didn't want to touch it, but I was too scared to refuse. I took the book from him, my fingers trembling. The leather was cold and smooth. The title was embossed in gold lettering, but I couldn't read it in the dim light. He pulled out a small flashlight from his other pocket and shined it on the book. The title read, "The Binding of Souls." My stomach dropped. I felt like I was going to throw up. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. He opened the book, revealing pages filled with strange symbols and handwritten text. "This is it," he said, his voice almost reverent. "This is how we become one." I didn't understand what he was talking about, but I knew it was bad, really bad. I wanted to get away from him, but I was paralyzed with fear. He started reading from the book, chanting in a language I didn't recognize. His voice grew louder and more intense, and the air around us seemed to crackle with energy. I could feel a tingling sensation in my skin, and my head started to spin. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the sound of his voice. I didn't want to hear what he was saying, didn't want to know what he was doing. I just wanted to disappear. When I opened my eyes, he was still chanting, but something had changed. His eyes were glowing, and his face was contorted in a grotesque smile. He looked inhuman. I finally found the strength to move. I dropped the book and ran, stumbling blindly through the darkness. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away from him. I ran as fast as I could, my lungs burning, my legs aching. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps pounding on the ground. He was gaining on me. I burst out of the gazebo and into the open park. I could see the lights of the city in the distance, a beacon of hope in the darkness. I ran towards them, praying that I could reach safety. He tackled me to the ground. I struggled, kicking and screaming, but he was too strong. He pinned me down, his face inches from mine. His eyes were still glowing, and his smile was still grotesque. "It's too late," he said, his voice a guttural growl. "We're already bound." He raised his hand, and I saw something glinting in the moonlight. A small, silver knife. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the end. But it never came. Instead, I heard a shout, and then a crash. I opened my eyes and saw a park ranger standing over us, his flashlight shining in David's face. David scrambled to his feet and ran off into the darkness. The park ranger helped me up, his face etched with concern. He asked me if I was okay, if I needed help. I just nodded, tears streaming down my face. I was shaken, terrified, but alive. The park ranger called the police, and they took a statement from me. They searched the park for David, but they never found him. I went home that night and locked all the doors and windows. I didn't sleep a wink. I just sat there, staring into the darkness, wondering what had just happened. I never went on another dating app again. Some things you just can't swipe away. The phone buzzed on the nightstand, startling me awake. Usually, that sound meant a work email I could safely ignore until morning. But tonight, it was different. It was him. My stomach did that weird flip-flop thing it had been doing ever since Mark slid into my DMs on SparkMatch. I should have known something was off. Guys that handsome don't usually go for girls like me. He was like unfairly good-looking. Think chiseled jaw, piercing blue eyes. The kind of guy you see in cologne commercials. And he was actually funny, which, let's be real, is a rare find on those apps. Our conversations flowed so easily. We talked about everything, movies, music, our families. Even those embarrassing childhood stories we usually keep buried deep. I'd been burned before, so I kept my guard up at first. But Mark was persistent and charming, and well, he just seemed genuine. After a week of constant texting, he asked me out. Dinner at that new Italian place downtown. I said yes faster than I probably should have. The date was perfect. He was even more attractive in person. The conversation was even better. He listened intently when I talked, asked thoughtful questions, and actually seemed interested in what I had to say. It was like something out of a rom-com. By the end of the night, I was completely smitten. We started seeing each other regularly. Weekends at the lake, movie nights at his place, even a spontaneous road trip to see the stars. He was attentive, thoughtful, and always made me feel special. My friends were jealous, my family adored him, and I was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, I'd finally found the one. Then, things started to get weird. It started small. A missed phone call that he couldn't explain. A vague answer when I asked about his friends. A sudden change of subject whenever I brought up his past. I brushed it off. Everyone has secrets, right? But the weirdness escalated. One night, I was over at his apartment when he got a text message. He glanced at it. His face went pale, and he quickly shoved his phone back in his pocket. When I asked who it was, he said it was just his mom. But I saw the name on the screen. It definitely wasn't his mom. Another time, we were walking through the park when he suddenly grabbed my arm and pulled me behind a tree. He said he thought he saw someone he knew, someone he didn't want to talk to. But the way he was acting, the fear in his eyes, it was way more than just avoiding an awkward encounter. I tried to talk to him about it, but he always deflected. He'd get angry, or defensive, or just shut down completely. He accused me of being paranoid, of not trusting him. And maybe I was. Maybe I was just letting my insecurities get the best of me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. Then came the incident with the key. I had been planning to surprise him with a home-cooked meal. I borrowed a spare key from him. The thing is, when I went to return it, he snatched it from my hand before I could even put it in his palm, and when I asked him why he acted like that, he changed the subject quickly. That's when I decided to do some digging. I started with his social media. His Facebook was practically empty. A few generic posts, no tagged photos, no friends listed. His Instagram was the same. Carefully curated photos of landscapes and cityscapes. Nothing personal, nothing revealing. It was like he didn't exist before he met me. That's when I got a bad feeling. A real one. I decided to drive to his apartment. I wanted to see his place. He had been acting real strange, and it was making me feel sick. I got there, and there was police tape all over the door. I froze and asked an officer what happened. He looked at me with a stang face. "Ma'am, are you a part of this investigation?" I shook my head no, and he said, "Do you know someone who lives here?" I nodded my head yes. He looked at me very confused and said, "I don't think that is possible, ma'am. This house has been sealed for years. This man that supposedly lives here has been deceased for 10 years now." I froze. I looked at the apartment number 14B. I double-checked my messages with Mark, and it was the same. I began crying, tears streaming down my face. No, he was just here. I saw him. I went on dates with him. I know him. I started to hyperventilate. The officer told me to calm down and said, "I'm going to call the detectives on the case, ma'am. Maybe you know something we don't." He was right. The detectives came and asked me questions. I told them everything, from the moment Mark messaged me on SparkMatch to the strange behavior I'd noticed in recent weeks. They listened patiently, taking notes, their faces grim. Then they showed me a picture. It was a faded, grainy photo of a man. The man in the picture was Mark, but he looked different, older, gaunter, and there was something else in his eyes, something cold and empty that I hadn't seen before. "This is Marcus Bell," one of the detectives said. "He was a suspect in a series of unsolved disappearances 10 years ago. Young women, all similar to you. He was never charged, but he disappeared shortly after the investigation. We thought he was dead." My blood ran cold. They took me to the police station, questioned me for hours. They wanted to know everything, every detail of my relationship with Mark, every place we'd been, everything we'd talked about. I told them everything I could remember, my mind racing, trying to make sense of it all. They searched Mark's apartment. They found nothing. No clothes, no personal belongings, no evidence of him ever living there. It was like he was a ghost, a figment of my imagination. But he wasn't. I knew he wasn't. I had seen him, touched him, kissed him. He was real. They never found him. The case went cold. They told me to move on, to forget about him, to try to put it behind me. But I can't. Every time my phone buzzes, I freeze. Every time I see a handsome man with blue eyes, I get a knot in my stomach. Every time I think about him, I get scared. SparkMatch. I shut it off. Never again. Because I know he's still out there. Watching. Waiting. And I know, with a chilling certainty, that he'll find another victim. Someone else who's looking for love in all the wrong places. Someone else who's as gullible as me. And I'll never forgive myself for letting him get away. And now, I don't think I'll ever date again. Dating apps are definitely not for me. I deleted the app after that. I still get nightmares about him and the apartment. I get scared that one day he will be standing outside my house. The notification pinged just as I was about to microwave my leftover pizza. Honestly, I almost ignored it. Another hey from some dude who clearly hadn't read my profile. But something made me check. It was a guy named Ethan. His picture was blurry, like he took it with a potato. But his profile said he was into hiking and obscure indie music. Two things I'm a sucker for. I swiped right. We started chatting, and it was actually good. He wasn't pushy or creepy. He asked about my favorite hikes, and we debated the merits of different synth bands. We talked for hours that night, and the next day, and the day after that. It was a total whirlwind. After a week of nonstop texting, he suggested we meet up. He picked a coffee shop downtown, the kind with mismatched chairs and overpriced lattes. I was nervous, but excited. When I saw him standing outside, I almost did a double take. He was way better looking than his potato pic suggested. He had this tousled dark hair, intense green eyes, and a kind of shy smile that made my stomach flip. The date was amazing. We talked for hours, laughing and finding common ground. He was smart, funny, and genuinely interested in what I had to say. He even knew the name of the band on my favorite t-shirt. By the end of the night, I was completely smitten. We started seeing each other a lot. Hiking, concerts, cozy nights, and watching movies. It felt perfect. Too perfect, maybe. Things started to get weird about a month in. He became possessive. Not in a screaming, jealous way, but in a subtle, unsettling way. He'd ask where I was, who I was with, multiple times a day. He'd get this almost hurt look on his face if I made plans without him. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was just really into me. But it escalated. He started showing up at my apartment unannounced. He'd say he was just in the neighborhood, or wanted to surprise me. One time, I came home from work to find him inside. He said I had left the window open. I definitely hadn't. I started to feel uneasy. It was like he was slowly trying to control my life. I tried talking to him about it, telling him I needed space. He'd get all apologetic and promise to do better, but then the behavior would just creep back in. One Saturday, he invited me to his family's cabin in the woods. It sounded like a nice getaway, so I reluctantly agreed. The drive was long and winding, the cell service non-existent. The cabin was isolated, like seriously isolated, miles from anything. No other houses in sight, just trees. Lots and lots of trees. The cabin itself was old and rustic, with creaky floors and a musty smell. It was the kind of place you'd see in a horror movie. Ethan said his parents hadn't used it in years. He showed me around, pointing out the ancient wood-burning stove and the cobweb-filled attic. That night, things took a turn. We were sitting by the fire, drinking wine, when he started talking about us, about how we were meant to be together, how he knew from the moment he saw my profile that I was the one. It was intense, way too intense. He reached for my hand, and I pulled away. "Ethan," I said, "this is moving too fast. I need you to slow down." His face changed. The soft, loving look vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. "Slow down," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I've been waiting for you my whole life. I'm not going to let you go." I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm leaving," I said. He blocked the door. "You're not going anywhere," he said. That's when I saw it. A glint of metal in his hand. A hunting knife. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the poker from the fireplace and swung it at him. He stumbled back, surprised. I ran. I ran out of the cabin and into the woods. It was dark and cold, the trees like grasping claws. I could hear him behind me, crashing through the undergrowth. I ran for what felt like hours, my lungs burning, my legs aching. I tripped and fell, scrambling to my feet and running again. Finally, I saw a light in the distance, a small, flickering light. I ran towards it, praying it wasn't another cabin. It was a gas station, a rundown, middle-of-nowhere gas station with a single, ancient payphone outside. I stumbled inside, babbling to the bewildered clerk about being chased through the woods. He looked at me like I was crazy, but he let me use the phone. I called the police. They found Ethan back at the cabin. He didn't resist arrest. They found the knife, and a whole lot of other disturbing things, like a scrapbook filled with pictures of me, taken without my knowledge, and a journal filled with his obsessive thoughts about our future. The trial was a blur. I had to testify, relive the terror of that night in the woods. Ethan was found guilty of stalking and attempted kidnapping. He's in prison now. I still have nightmares. Nightmares about the cabin, the woods, his eyes. I deleted all my dating apps. I don't think I'll ever use them again. Some people are just crazy, and they're really good at hiding it online. That's a life lesson I didn't want to learn. Okay, buckle up. This is going to be a wild one. The dating app notification flashed on my phone screen. You matched with Liam. I almost didn't swipe right, honestly. His profile picture was blurry, like he'd taken it mid-sneeze, and his bio just said, "Looking for fun." But I was bored, and he seemed harmlessly average. Plus, my best friend Maya was writing my case to get out there more. So yeah, I swiped. He messaged me immediately, which, okay, maybe a little eager, but also kind of flattering. We chatted for a few days, the usual getting-to-know-you stuff. He worked in tech support, liked hiking, and claimed to be a huge movie buff. Nothing that set off any alarm bells. We made plans to meet up at this new escape room place downtown. I figured, if the conversation died, at least we'd have something to do. The escape room was themed like an old, abandoned asylum. Creepy, I know, but I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. Liam was already there when I arrived, and he was different in person. Not bad different, just quieter than he'd been online. He was taller than I thought, and kinda lanky, with these intense blue eyes that seemed to look right through you. I chalked it up to first date jitters. The escape room started out fun. We were working together, solving puzzles, finding hidden clues. Liam was surprisingly good at it. He had this weirdly focused intensity, like he was trying to win $1 million. But then, things started to get weird. There was this one puzzle that involved a series of symbols etched into the wall. I was struggling to decipher them, but Liam just stared at them for a second, then started muttering under his breath. It wasn't English, or anything I recognized. It sounded ancient. When I asked him what he was saying, he snapped out of it like he was waking up from a dream. "Nothing," he said, his voice tight, just thinking out loud. After that, he got possessive. Every time I tried to examine something, he'd hover over me, his hand brushing against mine. It wasn't overtly creepy, but it was definitely making me uncomfortable. He started making all the decisions, pushing me aside to solve the puzzles himself. It felt less like a team effort and more like he was using me as a prop. Then came the really messed up part. One of the clues led us to a darkened room. The only light came from a flickering strobe, which made the shadows dance on the walls. There was a mannequin in the corner, dressed in a tattered nurse's uniform. I went to examine it, but Liam grabbed my arm. "Don't," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We don't need that one." I pulled away, confused, but it might have a clue. He shook his head violently. "No, trust me. We need to move on." His reaction was so intense that it actually scared me. I didn't understand why he was so freaked out by a plastic mannequin, but I didn't want to argue. We moved on to the next room, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. The rest of the escape room was a blur. Liam practically bulldozed his way through the remaining puzzles, ignoring my suggestions and barking orders. I was starting to feel genuinely trapped, not just in the game, but with him. Finally, we escaped, with only seconds to spare. As soon as we were out of the room, blinking in the harsh fluorescent lights of the lobby, I made my excuses. I told him I had a headache, thanked him for the fun evening, a total lie, and practically ran to my car. I thought that was the end of it. I blocked his number, unmatched him on the dating app, and tried to forget the whole thing. But he didn't let it go. He started showing up, at my work, at my gym, even outside my apartment building. He never said anything, just stood there, watching me with those intense blue eyes. It was terrifying. I changed my route to work, canceled my gym membership, and started sleeping with a baseball bat next to my bed. Then came the packages. Small, unmarked boxes started arriving at my apartment. Inside, there were strange things. Dried flowers, bird feathers, pebbles arranged in weird patterns. One box contained a lock of human hair. It wasn't mine. I went to the police, but they couldn't do anything. Since Liam hadn't actually threatened me, and the packages didn't contain anything explicitly illegal, they said there wasn't enough evidence to get a restraining order. They told me to document everything and call them if he escalated. The escalation came a week later. I woke up in the middle of the night to a scratching sound outside my bedroom window. I peeked through the blinds, and there he was, standing in my backyard, holding a small, hand-carved wooden doll. He was chanting something under his breath, his eyes fixed on my window. I called the police, screaming. They arrived within minutes and finally took him away. I found out later that the doll was some kind of religious symbol, and Liam had been practicing some form of dark magic or something. The police found my pictures in his apartment. There was also a journal filled with entries about me. The good news is that he's in jail now. He was charged with stalking, harassment, and a bunch of other stuff. I'm still dealing with the emotional fallout, of course. I barely sleep, and I jump at every shadow. But I learned a valuable lesson. Trust your gut. If something feels off, even if you can't explain why, get out. And maybe, just maybe, take a break from the dating apps for a while. I know I will. I still have dreams about that room, about the doll, about his blue eyes. That was the one and only dating app one would ever use. It started with a meme. Some stupid, relatable thing about hating dating apps, but also being hopelessly single. I screenshotted it, sent it to my best friend Sarah with a crying laughing emoji, and she replied instantly. Download Spark Match, loser. What have you got to lose besides more Friday nights with Ben and Jerry? I almost threw my phone across the room, but then boredom won out. Spark Match. Great name. I set up my profile, swiped left a bunch of times, so many questionable haircuts and gym selfies. And then, there he was. Liam. His profile was normal, which honestly was refreshing. No shirtless pics, no holding up dead fish, just a couple of smiling photos. One hiking, one at what looked like a music festival. His bio was short and sweet. Lover of bad jokes, good coffee, and exploring new places. Okay, Liam, you're officially not terrifying. Swipe right. We matched instantly. He messaged me almost immediately. Something witty about my profile picture. We talked for hours that night, discovering we had a ton in common. Indie music, obscure documentaries, a shared hatred for pineapple on pizza. It felt easy. Too easy, maybe? We texted for a week before deciding to meet up. He suggested this little dive bar downtown, the kind with sticky floors and a killer jukebox. I almost bailed. First dates always made me want to hide under my covers and binge-watch reality TV. But Sarah threatened to publicly shame me if I canceled, so I sucked it up and went. Liam was even better in person. He was taller than I expected, with this kind of awkward charm that made me instantly comfortable. The conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about everything and nothing, laughing until our stomachs hurt. He even told a few legitimately good jokes. I'm not gonna lie, I was smitten. We went out a few more times after that. Movies, concerts, picnics in the park. Each date felt better than the last. He was attentive, funny, and genuinely seemed interested in getting to know me. He remembered little details I'd mentioned in passing, like my favorite flower or the name of my childhood dog. It was all perfect. And that's when the little red flags started popping up, like digital landmines in a field of daisies. It began subtly. He'd text me constantly when we weren't together, needing to know what I was doing, who I was with. At first, I brushed it off as him just being into me. But then it started to feel suffocating. Then, he started showing up unexpectedly. I'd be at the grocery store, and there he'd be. Just happened to be in the neighborhood. Or I'd be meeting Sarah for coffee, and he'd appear, claiming he wanted to surprise me. It was always framed as a sweet gesture, but it felt intrusive. He never got angry, never yelled. It was always the subtle, almost passive-aggressive behavior that made me feel incredibly uneasy. It was like he was trying to control me, but in a way that made me feel crazy for thinking it. The biggest red flag came during a movie night at my apartment. I had fallen asleep on the couch, and when I woke up, Liam was standing over me, scrolling through my phone. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice groggy. He jumped, startled. "Oh, hey, I was just checking the time." He handed me my phone, but I could tell he was lying. My heart pounded in my chest. I felt violated. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I started doing some digging. A casual Google search of his name. I found his Facebook profile, then his Instagram. Everything seemed normal, but something still felt off. Then I found it, buried deep in a forum for true crime obsessives, a thread about missing persons in our area. And in that thread, a grainy, low-resolution photo of a young woman who had disappeared 6 months earlier. The caption read, "Possible sighting of missing woman's name," with a man matching the description of Liam's name at a local coffee shop. My blood ran cold. I scrolled through the comments, my hands shaking. Someone had posted a link to a news article about the disappearance. The woman had been last seen leaving her apartment to go on a date with a man she had met online. The description of the man in the article was chillingly similar to Liam. Tall, brown hair, charming. The article mentioned that the police had questioned several potential suspects, but no arrests had been made. I slammed my laptop shut, my mind racing. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't call the police. I had no concrete evidence, just a hunch and a grainy photo on the internet. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that I was in danger. I decided to end things with Liam. Over text. Pathetic, I know. But I was too scared to face him in person. I typed out a message, trying to sound casual and non-confrontational. "Hey Liam, I've been doing some thinking, and I don't think we're a good fit. I wish you all the best." I hit send and immediately blocked his number. I felt a small sense of relief, but the fear was still there, gnawing at me. The next few days were a blur. I stayed at Sarah's apartment, afraid to go home. I jumped at every noise, convinced that Liam was watching me. I barely slept, haunted by the image of the missing woman in the news article. A week later, I finally went back to my apartment. I changed the locks, installed a security system, and bought a can of pepper spray. I still felt uneasy, but I was determined to move on. Then, one evening, I was making dinner when I heard a knock on my door. My heart leaped into my throat. I peeked through the newly installed security camera. It was Liam. He was smiling, holding a bouquet of flowers. "Hey," he said, his voice calm and friendly. "I just wanted to apologize for being so clingy. I know I was a bit much. Can we talk?" I didn't say anything. I just stared at him through the camera, my hand shaking as I gripped the pepper spray. He waited for a few seconds, then his smile faded. "Fine," he said, his voice hardening. "Be that way." He dropped the flowers on the doorstep and walked away. I watched him until he disappeared around the corner. Then I locked the door, double-checked the security system, and curled up on the couch, shaking with fear. I don't know what Liam was planning. I don't know if he was involved in the disappearance of that woman. All I know is that I got out, and I'll never use a dating app again. I'm done with all of it. I still keep the pepper spray by my bed, just in case. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at it and saw a new notification from SparkMatch. "Liam wants to reconnect." I deleted the application and turned off my phone. I haven't looked back since. It started with a damn filter. Not even my own. Sarah, my best friend, practically shoved her phone in my face, giggling like an idiot. "You have to try this one. It makes everyone look like an anime character." I rolled my eyes, but let her snap a pic. Next thing I knew, she'd hijacked my dating profile and swapped out my perfectly normal, reasonably attractive picture with this thing. Huge, sparkling eyes, impossibly smooth skin, and a pout that made me look like I'd stepped straight out of a video game. I should have changed it back immediately. I really should have. The messages exploded. Guys I wouldn't have given a second glance to before were suddenly tripping over themselves to say hi. It was ridiculous, but also kind of flattering. I swiped right on a few, just to see what would happen. And that's how I met him. Liam. His profile was pretty standard. Hiking pics, a blurry shot of him playing guitar, and a bio that said he was looking for someone real. Normal enough. We matched, and he messaged me almost instantly. We talked for a few days, just the usual getting-to-know-you stuff. He seemed cool, laid back, into the same music as me. We even joked about how messed up the dating app world was. But there was something else too, something a little intense. He'd ask these super specific questions about my day, remembering little details I'd mentioned in passing. It was flattering at first, but then it started to feel a little invasive. We decided to meet up. He suggested this new coffee shop downtown, the one with all the weird, artsy stuff on the walls. I figured, why not? It was a public place, broad daylight. What could go wrong? I arrived a few minutes early, feeling that familiar pre-date mix of excitement and nerves. He wasn't there yet, so I grabbed a table and ordered a latte. I kept checking my phone, scrolling through Instagram, trying to look busy. He showed up about 15 minutes later. He was taller than I expected, with these piercing blue eyes and a kind of nervous energy about him. He was wearing a black hoodie, even though it was a pretty warm day. We said hi, and he immediately launched into a story about how he'd gotten stuck in traffic. It was a long, rambling story, filled with details I didn't really care about. I tried to be polite, nodding and smiling, but I was already starting to feel a little uneasy. As we talked, I noticed he kept staring at me, not in a flirty, interested kind of way, but in a way that made me feel like I was being studied. He'd ask a question, and then just stare. It was unnerving. He also kept touching my arm. Not like a quick, friendly touch, but a lingering, almost possessive touch. I started subtly pulling away, but he didn't seem to notice. The conversation started to get weird. He started asking about my family, my friends, where I lived. I tried to keep my answers vague, but he kept pressing. He even asked what kind of security system I had at my apartment. That was the moment I knew something was seriously wrong. I told him I had to go, that I had a prior engagement. He looked disappointed, but he didn't try to stop me. He walked me to my car, still touching my arm, still staring. He waited until I was safely inside before walking away. I drove home, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I locked all the doors and windows, and then just sat on my couch, trying to calm down. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside my window, sent a jolt of fear through me. I kept replaying the date in my head, trying to figure out what I had missed, what had made him act so strangely. The next day, I got a message from him. "I had a really great time yesterday," it said. "We should do it again soon." I didn't reply. I blocked his number and his profile on the dating app. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. A few days later, I started noticing things. Little things. A car that seemed to be following me on my way to work. A figure standing across the street from my apartment building. A package I didn't order showing up at my door. At first, I dismissed it as paranoia, but the feeling that I was being watched just kept getting stronger. One evening, I was walking home from the grocery store when I noticed someone behind me. I glanced back and saw him. Liam. He was walking quickly, closing the distance between us. I panicked. I started running, clutching my grocery bags tightly. I could hear his footsteps behind me, getting closer. I turned down a side street, hoping to lose him. I ran and ran, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I finally made it to my apartment building, fumbling with my keys as I tried to unlock the door. I could hear him getting closer, his footsteps echoing on the pavement. I finally got the door open and slammed it shut behind me, locking it just as he reached the entrance. I ran upstairs to my apartment, locking the door behind me. I peered through the peephole and saw him standing there, staring at my door. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, before finally turning and walking away. I called the police, but they said there wasn't much they could do without any concrete evidence. They took a report, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every noise, every shadow made me jump. I stayed up, watching the street below, waiting for him to come back. I decided I couldn't stay there anymore. I packed a bag, grabbed my cat, and drove to my parents' house. I stayed there for a few weeks, feeling safe and protected. Eventually, I moved to a different city, changed my phone number, and deleted all my social media accounts. I started going by my middle name. I tried to erase any trace of my old life. It's been years since that happened. I still think about him sometimes. I still have nightmares. I'm still afraid. I'm still looking over my shoulder. I never went back to dating apps. I don't think I ever will. The anime filter was a gateway to something truly disturbing, something that changed my life forever. It serves as a reminder that the internet isn't always what it seems, and that sometimes the people behind the profiles are not who they say they are. I learned the hard way that even a seemingly harmless swipe can have devastating consequences. I was lucky to escape, but the scars remain. He matched instantly. We started chatting, mostly about our favorite creepy locations. Old hospitals, forgotten asylums, that kind of thing. He knew his stuff. He wouldn't give me his real name, called himself Silas, but he was witty and surprisingly charming. After a week, he suggested we meet up. Not at a coffee shop or a bar, obviously. He had a place in mind, the old Blackwood Mill, a textile factory that had burned down years ago, leaving behind a skeletal ruin a few towns over. I should have said no. My gut was screaming at me, but the allure of the unknown, and maybe a tiny bit of morbid curiosity, won out. The drive there was unsettling. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood orange and bruised purple. The GPS took me down increasingly narrow, unpaved roads, swallowed by dense woods. By the time I reached the mill, it was pitch black. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something acrid and metallic. The mill was even more imposing than I imagined. The fire had left gaping holes in the brick walls, exposing the rusted machinery inside. It looked like the set of a horror movie. Silas was waiting for me near the entrance, cloaked in shadow. He was taller than I expected, with piercing eyes that seemed to reflect the faint moonlight. He was giving off major red flags. "Glad you made it," he said, his voice low and gravelly. We didn't talk much as we explored the mill. Silas led the way, a powerful flashlight cutting through the darkness. The interior was a maze of crumbling walls, twisted metal, and piles of ash. Every creak and groan of the building sent jolts of fear through me. I kept expecting something to jump out, a ghost or a rat, or something far worse. At one point, we stumbled upon a room that had somehow remained relatively intact. It was small, with a single window overlooking the woods. In the center of the room was a table covered in strange objects, old tools, broken dolls, and bundles of dried herbs. It looked like some kind of altar. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Silas didn't answer. He just smiled, a slow, unsettling smile that didn't reach his eyes. He picked up one of the dolls, a porcelain one with a cracked face, and turned it over in his hands. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he murmured. I wanted to leave, to run screaming back to my car. But I was frozen, paralyzed by fear. I just stared at Silas, trying to decipher what was going on in his head. He placed the doll back on the table and turned to me. His eyes were different now, wider, more intense. "I have something to show you," he said. He led me deeper into the mill, down a narrow corridor that I hadn't noticed before. The air grew colder, the smell of decay stronger. We reached a heavy wooden door, reinforced with iron bars. Silas unlocked it with a key he pulled from his pocket. Beyond the door was a basement. It was damp and dark, lit only by a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were lined with shelves, and on the shelves were jars. Jars filled with things. Things I couldn't quite make out in the dim light. Silas grinned. "My collection," he said. I took a step closer, my heart pounding in my chest. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I began to see what was in the jars. Organs. Preserved organs. Hearts, livers, kidneys. And some things I couldn't identify at all. I gagged, stumbling backward. "What the hell is this?" Silas chuckled. "A hobby," he said. "A passion." He picked up one of the jars, holding it up to the light. Inside was a human eye, staring blankly back at me. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he repeated. I didn't wait any longer. I turned and ran, scrambling back up the stairs, through the corridor, and out of the room. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping for breath in the cold night air. Silas didn't follow me. I ran all the way back to my car, fumbling with the keys, desperate to get away. As I sped down the dirt road, I glanced in my rearview mirror. I saw Silas standing in the entrance of the mill, watching me go. He was still smiling. I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing those jars, those organs, that eyes staring back at me. I went to the police, but I had nothing to report. No real name, no address, just a blurry photo and a creepy story. They took my statement, but I could tell they didn't believe me. I deleted the dating app. I threw away my phone. I moved to a different state. I tried to forget, but I can't. Every now and then, I see something that reminds me of him. A dark-haired man in a crowd, a porcelain doll in a shop window, the smell of decay in the air. And I'm right back in that basement, staring at those jars, feeling that same cold terror. I still think about him. I wonder what he's doing, what other abandoned places he's exploring, what other collections he's building. I wonder if he's found someone else to share his passion with. And I wonder if he's looking for me. The dating app notification pinged on my phone, and honestly, I almost ignored it. I was elbow deep in studying for my organic chemistry final, and the last thing I needed was another dud conversation leading nowhere. But something about the profile pic stopped me. It wasn't the typical posed, filtered shot. It was a candid picture of him laughing, eyes crinkled at the corners, standing in front of what looked like an old bookstore. Intriguing. His name was Liam. I swiped right. We started talking, and it was surprisingly easy. He was witty, self-deprecating, and actually seemed interested in what I had to say. He wasn't just dropping the usual tired lines. He asked about my classes, my hobbies, which are mostly nerdy stuff involving books and hiking, and even remembered details from previous conversations. It felt different. Like maybe, just maybe, this could be something real. After a week of constant chatting, he suggested we meet up. He proposed a hike in the Redwood National Park, followed by dinner at a small seafood place he knew in a nearby town. I hesitated. Meeting someone from a dating app in the middle of nowhere seemed a little risky, even for me, the eternal optimist. But he was so enthusiastic, and the thought of escaping my textbooks for a day was too tempting. Plus, I told myself, Redwood National Park is a pretty popular place. It wouldn't be like we were completely isolated. I agreed. The day of the hike dawned crisp and clear. I packed a backpack with water, snacks, and a small first aid kit, just in case. I drove the 2 hours to the park, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety churning in my stomach. When I saw him waiting at the trailhead, leaning against his beat-up Jeep, a wave of relief washed over me. He looked even better in person, tall, with kind eyes and a genuine smile that made me forget all my worries. The hike started out perfectly. The redwoods were majestic, the air was fresh, and Liam was even more charming in person. We talked about everything and nothing as we walked, laughing and sharing stories. He seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say, and I found myself opening up to him in a way I usually didn't with people I'd just met. After a couple of hours, he suggested we take a detour off the main trail to see a waterfall he knew about. He said it was a bit of a hidden gem, and the path was a little rougher, but it was worth it. I trusted him. Big mistake. The path quickly devolved into a barely discernible trail winding through dense undergrowth. The sunlight faded as we plunged deeper into the forest, and the air grew damp and heavy. I started to feel uneasy. I kept glancing over my shoulder, and the sounds of the forest seemed amplified, every rustle and snap making me jump. I asked him how much further it was, and he just smiled and said, "Almost there. It's a surprise." That's when things started to go wrong. He stopped abruptly, pointing to a small, dilapidated cabin hidden amongst the trees. "I wanted to show you something special," he said, his voice suddenly low and husky. My heart sank. This wasn't part of the plan. There was no mention of a cabin. I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He didn't answer. He just stared at me, his smile gone, his eyes now cold and unnerving. He reached out and grabbed my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "Come on," he said, pulling me towards the cabin. "I want you to see what I've been working on." I tried to pull away, but he wouldn't let go. I was starting to panic. My mind raced, trying to figure out what to do. Yelling wouldn't do any good. We were too far from the main trail. Fighting him seemed risky. He was much bigger and stronger than me. He dragged me to the cabin door, which hung crookedly on its hinges. The air around the cabin was thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something acrid and metallic, that made my stomach churn. He pushed the door open and pulled me inside. The inside of the cabin was dark and cramped. The only light came from a single, dusty window. The air was stale and heavy, and the silence was suffocating. It was filled with strange objects. Old tools, rusted chains, animal skulls, and jars filled with murky liquids lined the walls. In the center of the room, there was a makeshift table covered in what looked like surgical instruments. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. This wasn't just weird, this was terrifying. "What is this place?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He turned to me, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "This is my sanctuary," he said, his voice soft and sinister. "My place to create." He took a step closer to me, and I instinctively backed away. He was blocking the door. "Create what?" I asked, my voice trembling. He smiled, a slow, chilling smile that sent a jolt of pure terror through my veins. "You'll see," he said. "You'll see everything." That's when I knew I was in serious danger. This wasn't a date gone wrong. This was something much darker, much more twisted. I had to get out of there. I took a deep breath and tried to appear calm. "Liam," I said, "I don't feel well. I think I need to go back. Maybe we can come back another time." He didn't move. He just stood there, blocking my escape, his eyes fixed on me with an unnerving intensity. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his voice now hard and cold. "You're going to stay here with me." My heart pounded in my chest. I knew I had to act fast. I scanned the room, desperately looking for something, anything, I could use to defend myself. My eyes landed on a heavy wrench lying on the table. It was my only chance. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged for the wrench. He was faster than I expected. He grabbed my arm, his grip like a vice. I struggled, but he was too strong. "Don't make this difficult," he said, his voice menacing. I kicked him in the shin with all my might. He yelped in pain and momentarily loosened his grip. I wrenched my arm free and grabbed the wrench. He lunged at me again, but I swung the wrench with everything I had, hitting him in the head. He stumbled backward, clutching his head, his eyes wide with shock and pain. I didn't hesitate. I ran. I burst out of the cabin and sprinted through the forest, not knowing where I was going, not caring. I just had to get away. I could hear him crashing through the undergrowth behind me, but I didn't look back. I ran as fast as I could, my lungs burning, my legs aching. I stumbled and fell, scraping my knees and hands, but I got back up and kept running. I ran until I could no longer hear him. I ran until I reached the main trail. I collapsed onto the trail, gasping for air, my body shaking uncontrollably. I pulled out my phone and called 911. The police arrived quickly. I told them everything that had happened. They searched for Liam, but they couldn't find him. He had vanished into the forest. I spent the next few days in a haze of fear and anxiety. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I couldn't shake the image of that cabin and Liam's twisted smile from my mind. The police eventually closed the case, citing a lack of evidence. They said it was possible I had imagined the whole thing, that I was just suffering from stress and exhaustion. But I knew what I had seen. I knew what had happened. I deleted the dating app. I vowed never to trust anyone I met online again. The redwoods, once a symbol of beauty and peace, now represented something much more sinister, a reminder of the day I almost lost my life. Now I live in a different state. I still check the news every day, hoping I never see Liam's face again. But some days, when I'm hiking and the sun filters through the trees, just right, I feel a familiar chill, and I remember the cabin, the smell, and his eyes. I know he's still out there, and that thought will haunt me forever. It started with a blurry photo and a bio that just said, "Looking for adventure." I swiped right because, honestly, I was bored, and his profile pic kind of looked like a hotter version of that guy from that one show. His name was Liam. I usually don't go for the super vague profiles, but something about him just drew me in. Maybe it was the promise of something, anything, other than the same old routine. We matched instantly. He messaged me pretty quick. "What kind of adventure are you looking for?" I played it cool. "Depends. What kind are you offering?" He replied with an address. Not his address. He made that clear right away. He said it was an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town and told me to meet him there at midnight. He said to wear dark clothes and to not bring my phone. That should have been a massive red flag, I know. My friends would have called me crazy, but that little voice in my head that always craved something different, something exciting, was screaming yes. I told him I'd be there. The warehouse was in a part of town I'd never really been to before. Everything was gray and gritty, the air thick with a weird chemical smell. The warehouse itself was huge and imposing, a dark silhouette against the night sky. Honestly, as I pulled up and parked a block away like he told me, I almost bailed. My heart was pounding. This was way more intense than any date I'd ever been on. But I'd come this far. I took a deep breath, got out of the car, and started walking. The entrance was a busted-out loading dock door. It creaked ominously as I squeezed through. Inside, it was pitch black. I could hear the scurrying of rats somewhere in the distance. The air was cold and damp. "Liam," I called out, my voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Over here," a voice answered. It sounded like him. Deeper, maybe. I followed the sound, my hands outstretched, feeling my way through the darkness. Eventually, I saw a faint light in the distance. As I got closer, I realized it was coming from a single flickering lantern. Liam was standing beside it. He looked different than his picture. Taller, for one thing. And his eyes, they were intense. Way more intense than I remembered. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Glad you could make it." "So," I said, trying to sound casual even though I was freaking out inside, "what's this adventure you promised?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared at me for a long moment, his eyes scanning me from head to toe. It made me really uncomfortable. Then, he turned and walked deeper into the warehouse. "Follow me," he said. I hesitated for a second, but then I followed him. What else was I going to do? Run back to my car and admit I was a total idiot? We walked for what felt like forever, deeper and deeper into the warehouse. The air grew colder, the silence more oppressive. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Finally, we reached a large open space. In the center of the space was a circle drawn on the floor in what looked like chalk. Inside the circle were a bunch of strange symbols I didn't recognize. Liam stopped at the edge of the circle and turned to me. "This is it," he said. "This is what?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He smiled again, that same unsettling smile. "This is where the adventure begins." He then pulled out a small knife. It glinted in the lantern light. My blood ran cold. "What are you doing?" I stammered. He didn't answer. He just started chanting something in a language I didn't understand. His voice grew louder and louder, the chanting more and more frantic. I backed away slowly, my eyes fixed on the knife in his hand. I knew, right then, that I'd made a terrible mistake. This wasn't an adventure. This was a nightmare. I turned and ran. I ran as fast as I could, back the way we came, through the darkness, the sound of his chanting echoing behind me. I could hear him running after me. I stumbled, fell, scrambled back to my feet, and kept running. I didn't dare look back. I finally reached the loading dock door and burst out into the night. I ran all the way back to my car, my lungs burning, my heart pounding. I fumbled with the keys, got in, locked the doors, and started the engine. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away, back in the safety of my own neighborhood. I haven't been on a dating app since. I still get this weird feeling walking alone at night. I still have nightmares sometimes, about the warehouse, the chanting, the knife, about Liam's eyes. And every once in a while, I catch myself wondering what would have happened if I hadn't run, if I'd stayed. I don't want to know. The glow of my phone lit up my face in the otherwise dark room. I swiped, another profile, another face. Honestly, I was getting bored with this whole online dating thing. Felt like I was just scrolling through an endless catalog of people I'd probably never meet. But then there he was. Liam. His profile was different from the others. No shirtless gym selfies. No group photos where you had to guess who he was. Just a simple picture of him smiling, standing in front of a bookstore, holding a dog-eared copy of The Picture of Dorian Gray. He seemed normal. Interesting. I swiped right. We matched instantly. He messaged me almost immediately, complimenting my music taste based on one of the obscure bands I'd listed in my bio. It was a good start. We chatted for hours that first night, discovering shared interests in old movies, hiking trails, and a mutual disdain for pineapple on pizza. He seemed genuine, funny, and surprisingly insightful. After a week of constant texting, we decided to meet up. He suggested a coffee shop near my apartment, a place I frequented and felt comfortable in. I was nervous, of course, but also excited. Maybe, just maybe, this could be something real. He was even better in person. He had this easy charm about him, a way of making you feel completely at ease. We talked for hours, the coffee growing cold in our mugs. He told me about his job as a graphic designer, his passion for photography, and his dream of traveling the world. I felt like I could tell him anything. We went on a few more dates after that. A walk in the park, a movie night at my place, even a spontaneous road trip to a nearby beach. Everything felt natural, easy. I was starting to fall for him. Then, things started to get weird. It started subtly. He'd ask questions about my routine, my schedule, things that seemed innocent enough at first. What time do you usually leave for work? Do you live alone? What floor is your apartment on? I brushed it off as him just being interested in my life. But then the questions became more frequent, more pointed. He started showing up at places I hadn't told him I'd be. Once, I was having lunch with a friend at a cafe across town, and he walked in, claiming he was just in the neighborhood. Another time, I was at a yoga class, and he was there too, saying he'd been meaning to try it out. It was unnerving. I tried to talk to him about it, but he'd just laugh it off, saying I was being paranoid. "Don't you want me to be around?" he'd ask, his eyes wide and innocent. "I just want to spend as much time with you as possible." I wanted to believe him, but a knot of unease was forming in my stomach. Something wasn't right. One evening, I came home from work to find my apartment door unlocked. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I slowly pushed the door open, peering inside. Liam was there, sitting on my couch, reading a book. My book. A first edition copy of Dracula that I kept locked away in a special case. "Hey," he said, looking up with a smile. I let myself in. "I hope you don't mind. I wanted to surprise you." I was speechless. How did he get in? How did he know about the book? I don't understand. I stammered. "How did you get in here? And why are you reading my book?" He chuckled. "Don't be silly. I have a key. You gave it to me, remember? And I just wanted to borrow your book. I know how much you love it." I hadn't given him a key. I was sure of it. I told him to leave. I told him I needed space. He seemed hurt, confused. He kept asking what he'd done wrong. I didn't answer, just pointed to the door. He finally left, but the feeling of dread didn't go away. I changed the locks, installed a security system, and blocked his number. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still watching me. A few days later, I got a package in the mail. It was a small velvet box. Inside was a single dried rose. Attached was a note written in Liam's handwriting. "I'm sorry. I just want to be with you." I threw the box in the trash, my hands trembling. I started seeing him everywhere. In the grocery store, across the street, even in my dreams. I knew he was stalking me. I went to the police, but they said there was nothing they could do unless he physically harmed me. They told me to file a restraining order, but I knew that wouldn't stop him. I was trapped. One night, I woke up to a noise outside my window. I crept to the window and peered through the blinds. Liam was standing on the sidewalk, staring up at my apartment. He was holding a sign. "I love you," it read. I slammed the blinds shut and ran to the other room, my heart pounding in my chest. I was terrified. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, watching the security camera footage, waiting for him to make a move. He didn't, but I knew he was still out there, waiting. I decided to move. I packed my bags, sold my furniture, and left town without telling anyone. I changed my name, got a new phone number, and started a new life in a new city. I still look over my shoulder, even now. I still have nightmares about him. I know he's probably forgotten about me, moved on to someone else, but I can't shake the feeling that he's still out there, somewhere, waiting for me to slip up. Online dating? Never again. Some connections are best left unmade. The digital world can conjure monsters you never knew existed. And sometimes, the charming guy with the book is hiding something much darker beneath the surface.